Hey everybody, thanks for coming back to my videos. To check out the production of Freedom, it's still 9 in the morning. I have not yet had caffeine, probably gonna stumble over all my words. And Catherine, who is on the video with me, and I were just talking about how this is a big sacrifice for both of us because we had to put on makeup for this.
The struggle is real. Had to put on eyeliner for you guys.
Yeah, she's put on eyeliner for us, so that just shows how awesome we are. So as part of Freedom's launch, a lot of people are always asking me about the book production process. So I thought we would talk to Catherine about the funnest topic of all, and that is my weaknesses as a writer. So
which are not very many because you're incredibly talented.
Oh.
But every writer's got a few.
Yeah, oh gosh, so many. And it's funny because I have to be really careful when I read other books because I'm like, oh my gosh, if they use that phrase one more time, I'm going to stop reading. And then I talk to Catherine and she's like, Katie, if you use that phrase one more time, I'm going to stop editing. So it's inherent in all of us, that's for sure. But Catherine and I joke around, she's my editing wife because we've worked together from the beginning. Like you developmentally edited Miss Mabel's. Yeah, so you have touched every single one of my books, which is awesome because you know my world probably better than anyone next to me, and probably better than me because I can't remember half of this because I had children in the midst of it. But
that'll
yeah,
make anyone too tired to remember anything.
Seriously, there are moments where I've forgotten what happened to my books, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how does like J.K. Rowling do it? Because she has even more complex books. Anyway,
let me let you in on a little secret. I do that too, and I have many fewer books out and no children, so I have no excuse. I think you're doing pretty well there.
Oh, that does make me feel better. Excuses or not, I think it's probably every author, right? So,
absolutely. Catherine
has just finished line editing Freedom. So we have this process that we've worked out over like 80 billion books together. And it's as soon as I get the book to the point where beta readers have read it, sensitivity readers have read it, because I had a sensitivity reader this time. And I'm like, okay, I literally can't get it any better. This is exactly what it's supposed to be. I send it to Catherine. And Freedom was 114,000 words. Is that right?
It's shorter now, but yeah, 115,000 words. We got it down. We got it down to about 107,000 words.
Oh, nice. She puts my books on diets, that's for sure. Actually, it was 140,000 words. And I was like, Catherine will kill me if I give this to her. Like, there's no way this is going to fly. So I cut it to
it would have been all right, but you probably would not have had your July release date. Yeah.
So for you guys to have some reference, Miss Mabel School for Girls is 92,000 words. So Freedom is just a couple, like what, not quite, I don't know, that's math. That's like what, 25?
Yeah, it's about 4 pages for every 1,000 words, more or less, 3.5, 4 pages.
So we're looking at like 100 pages more or something.
Don't ask me to do math in my head. There's a reason I'm an editor, Katie.
So it's like 25,000 words longer. So it's longer than Miss Mabel School for Girls. It's about Miss Mildred's Resistance size. So it's a good size book. And so I sent it to her and she has like a month and she goes through and line edits. I'll let her tell you what she does. And then she sends it back to me and I have 48 hours to go through it. And we send it back to Stephanie, who then does copy edits. And then I send it to friends after that who does another copy edit, the launch team. And through all that process, we're constantly proofreading because you guys, I found a mistake on like a box of food the other day. Like I saw a misspelled word on a box of food yesterday and I almost took a picture and said, ha, like it's not just my book.
There's always another error.
Yes.
And you find this in like those major books that, come out of like not just the big 5 houses, but like out of the very biggest name authors at those houses. So like, they have had their entire editorial team on it. And there's always one more. Always. So
if there's ever a question in your mind, I think most authors probably put their books through like 25 people before we actually get it in the world, if not more. And it still will have mistakes, but we mitigate as much as we can.
Yes, so, we get rid of 99.9% of them.
And then the trolls on Amazon find the other.
point them out. Yes, or they find things that aren't actually errors, that are actually like a style difference that was intentional. And
and then they call it out as an error. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, definitely. So I think we should first we'll talk about my things you noticed in Freedom. We're not going to tell you too much because I don't want you to, like, to distract from the actual book. I don't want you to read Freedom and be like, oh, Katie didn't do this or this or this. But and then after that, we're going to go into kind of the line editing process. Sorry, baby needs. Then Catherine can explain exactly what like line and copy edits. So go for it, Catherine.
Absolutely. So Freedom is, first of all, wonderful book. I'm so excited for you guys to all read it. I have to throw that compliment to Katie, so she'll let me back on sometime.
Well, and our egos are so fragile as well.
Right. But no, is a really wonderful book. I think that every writer is going to have what I call quirks, and they're not necessarily bad things. Sometimes they're bad things. Sometimes quirks just don't work at all. But often those quirks are just things that the writer does a little too often, or that the characters seem to do over and over repeatedly. So in Freedom, I noticed that Isadora and Santa in particular, although some of the other characters too, were always swallowing hard. And sometimes those quirks crop up like throughout an author's career, or sometimes just in one book, or sometimes just in a section of one book. But this was particularly in the second half of Freedom. Everyone suddenly
intense. Yeah.
Yes, when things get intense, then everyone suddenly started swallowing hard in reaction. So I eliminated most of those. Sometimes the characters just swallow. Sometimes they swallow hard. One bit her lip at one point, or we sometimes I just cut them all together because we didn't need anything there. But that was a repetitive thing. In the first half of the book, light is blunted a lot.
Blunted. Oh, is it because of Leadham Wood?
Yeah, it's through the canopy of Leadham Wood that blunts light. I think windows also blunt light. We eliminated some of that. And one that has been a constant throughout your career is dust motes. Dust motes are always visible in the light.
I didn't know that. See, this is why Catherine's so good, is because then when I go back through her edits, I'm also gonna remove swallowing references and figure out something else. So you guys are gonna get an even better book. And dust motes, I'll have to think about that one. One that I know I do a lot that we had talked about is I will use the word seem. Like, it seemed to be blah blah blah, and I don't know why. I think I do that in early stages because I'm not quite sure how a situation's laying out or how they're responding, and so they seem to respond a certain way until I can go back after edits and like, oh no, this definitely happens or laid out. So that's funny.
And I think some of that, that's something that a lot of writers do, and I think it's because we're trying to get the point of view right. Because something, just a random little thing about the technical side of writing is that generally you don't want to peek into more than one character's head in a given scene. That's that full omniscient point of view is what it's called when you're looking into everyone's head. That was really popular back like when Dostoevsky was doing his thing.
Right,
but it's something
more before TV and television and radio.
It's an older technique, but it's really fallen out of favor in part because it makes things confusing. Mm-hmm. It's harder to tell, who is thinking what, and it makes it so that you have to like overwrite a lot more, and it just makes things clunkier. So because of that, because we're only looking into one head per scene, often when a character is watching someone else react, they don't know for sure what the person is thinking. So they use words like seemed to or as if. And so sometimes it can be overdone. But sometimes it is just that needing to communicate what's going on in the scene while not falling into the trap of head hopping.
Well, the head hopping too, it can be difficult because you end up giving too much away, so it's boring to the reader.
Yes, that's absolutely
true. So then let's talk about what exactly is line editing? So I'm giving you this very imperfect manuscript, right? And because by the time I get to Catherine, about 70% of my work is done. Like the story is pretty much decided, it's written, but now I always say every story is like an onion that has layer after layer after layer after, and they all stink. No, just kidding. Some are really good. But you have to really layer a book to life, and line editing is a huge layering process, because not only are you like, okay, Katie, everyone's got to stop swallowing. Like there's a nervous tick in this entire world where everyone is swallowing. And also like, well, this detail isn't consistent. Like earlier in the scene, they were sitting down, but now all of a sudden they're standing. When did that happen? Like you can get really nitty gritty. So tell us more about that aspect as you kind of dove into freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, when I'm line editing, I am looking, line by line. I mean, it's right there in the name. I'm looking at the scene as it is in front of me. I'm smoothing out the language. I'm looking for repetitive phrasing. I'm looking for those little inconsistencies. There was a sea dragon in this book that I think was orange and then purple, although I wasn't totally sure. There was just a little moment where I had a little bit of clarity lacking and I wasn't sure about. So I left a marginal note.
Mm-hmm. Which is huge, because if you don't know, my reader won't know.
Right. So it's, saying, are we doing this or are we doing this? Pick one.
Like, what are you doing, Katie? What are you doing? What's going on?
Most of the time in a line edit, there aren't a ton of marginal notes. Mostly I'm just editing with track changes on in Microsoft Word and actually inputting those changes directly into the manuscript so that Katie can go through and say, oh yes, that's right. Oh yes, Catherine's brilliant here. And
actually,
what was Catherine even doing here? This change is ridiculous now.
Actually, can I confess how I do your edits? So
please.
Just so you guys know, I will have another video on this where I actually get Catherine's edits back, and I'm going to show you what they look like in the first scene, because I've already given a free sneak peek of that away. And I'll show you what it looks like to be line edited, because it kind of sucks your heart out. Like, oh, I suck at this every time. But I will say is I think we worked together so long and I trust you so much that I just hit save all changes at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just read through it. Like I don't even, because there's a lot sometimes, which is great. And that's what I want, especially if you cut 7,000 words. But it's like, I would never do this with anyone but you. I think I don't even read them. I just hit select, like save all. So all of the changes are accepted. Mm-hmm. And then I just go through and read the book. And most of the time, sometimes I'll be like, did I write that? Like, that's really good. Or I'll be like, no, Catherine had to put that. Like, I definitely didn't put that last time. So sometimes I'll go check just to see, but most of the time it's you.
That actually can be a really good way to do it, because with a lot of writers, sometimes people can introduce errors back into the manuscript as they're tinkering with things. So you can say, oh yeah, I like that, but I want to move this phrase here, and then just something goes wrong during that moving. So
it gets all wonky. Yeah.
I think that there is something to be said for that hands-off approach, if you can handle it, because sometimes there has to be a certain level of rapport between writer and editor.
Absolutely.
For that.
Well, and I know that you flag the big stuff, right? Like, or you'll even say, hey, I changed this here because of XYZ. Like you missed context here, so I moved this paragraph. Like you'll normally explain the bigger thing. So if I looked at it, I'm like, what? And if there's anything I'm super tied into, I would remember it anyway. So if you change it. So that's how I do it. I just like save myself time. I trust you implicitly. I just save everyone time that way. So awesome. Well, we're going to start wrapping up because it's been just about 10 minutes because it's so fun. I could talk about this forever. And we could go into my mini errors.
Trust me, the readers don't want to hear me ramble about the nitty gritty for as long as I would do.
I know we'd be here until the launch, really. We could talk, until July about this. But thanks so much for first editing Freedom and all of my books. And also coming on to kind of talk about it. I think it's a fun insight for everyone to kind of learn what I don't do great and just how the process
Which is not very many things.
You're very kind. I would hope after what is this, 22? Like this is my 21st?
It's
my 21st book launch, that's for sure. That we'd have something figured out. So All right. Well, you're awesome, Catherine. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.